Alright, hello guys. I'm here to explain how the boomerang works, and this has been something that has been highly requested. We're just going to be talking about what's going on here. So that's what we're going to be doing. And to find out what's actually happening under the hood, we're actually going to turn on my secret sauce. So what's going on that you don't really see is that, okay, so right now here's my mouse, it's on the screen, and I'm pressing somewhere on the game screen. As I'm pressing it, I'm creating these pixels. They are actually objects. They're objects that are being created, and the boomerang just simply follows the red objects, like the nearest ones, and then it crashes if it hits in a solid object. It can also do a couple of things. It can grab the bomb, and the boomerang actually destroys the bomb if the boomerang collides with a solid. Not only a solid, but it will also explode if it detects an enemy. There we go. Good little boomerang. So we're going to be talking about what's going on in this code. It's pretty cool. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to see how the game creates the boomerang. And for that, I just have three different events that are happening in the object player. You can have them in the object game, anywhere might be better for this. I have them here because that way it guarantees that the object player exists in the game, you know? So what's going on? Here, first we have a left pressed. The purpose of this event is it's going to put in the first red pixel. The boomerang is going to be following the red pixels, right? And the first red pixel that exists in the room is the target location for that boomerang. The purpose of this left down event, we're going to be talking more about this in detail, is it's going to be continuously creating more red pixels, and it's also going to create the little path, you know. Then we have the released event, and this one, what it's responsible for is it's going to be releasing the boomerang into the game world. And we're gonna, here are the items I have for the boomerang. I have the red pixels. This is the path that the boomerang follows, but we hide it so the player doesn't see it. The reason we do this is because it's very accurate. You know, if we only had these yellow paths, you know, so you know we could be asking ourselves, you know, why don't we have the yellow paths? The here we have, you know, the yellow boxes. Why don't we just follow those? The reason is I found out that the red pixels are way more accurate, and I like accuracy in games. I don't want there to be room for error. So I thought it'd be better for players to give them more accuracy. So that's why we have that's why the boomerang follows these red pixels, and it doesn't follow the yellow boxes. The yellow boxes are there for aesthetic, if anything. Then we're gonna have the arrow. This is gonna be created where the mouse is being held, left is gonna be held, and its image index is going to be it's going to be the same as the last red pixel that was created. You know? And then we have our boomerang and the boomerang trail that follows behind it. It's a nice aesthetic purpose. Alright, so let's get into the code, and I'll be explaining what I have. So the way everything starts out with the left pressed event. And here, first we got to make sure that the boomerang does not exist. You know, if the boomerang did exist, we could have multiple boomerangs, and we don't want that. Then we need to make sure that no these yellow objects exist, and no of these red boxes exist. We need to make sure that they don't, because then we can have more pathways, and it just screws up a lot of things. So here we just got to make sure that everything is reset. Then we got to make sure that the state of the player is the right one. Here you can have state equals player dot. This one is for the game that bended, but if you can just leave this blank if you aren't using the project that I'm working on. Then this one is also for the game. it just makes sure that we have over 2 stamina, because we're going to be deleting 2 stamina from our stamina meter. Again, if you aren't using Ben's tutorial, you can just leave these blank. They don't really matter. What matters is just to make sure that this one's the biggest one, that no, the boomerang isn't there. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be creating these the yellow boxes, and we're also going to be creating the red boxes. So we're going to instance create the mouse X, mouse Y, instances of yellow. Oh, let me move this so here so you can see the screen properly. Okay, so we're just going to be creating the yellow boxes on the screen, and then we're going to be setting the alpha to 0. The reason why we set this to 0 is if we set it to 1, it'll just be easier to show you. It kind of like, I want it to fade in, you know, very, very subtly. So there, the boxes just appeared. Whereas here, they're gonna like fade in. It's really subtle and it's a nice aesthetic thing, and I'm a perfectionist, and I think it just looks nicer that way. So we set the image alpha to 0. And here we have the, then we're gonna create the red particles. The red particles are, again, what the boomerang is gonna be following. And we're just going to be continuously creating them wherever our mouse X and mouse Y is. Then the very last thing we're going to be creating is going to be the arrow. You know, as you saw in the game, an arrow was being created that pointed to the path that the boomerang was going to follow. We're going to be creating that here too. We're also going to put in another to make sure that a second arrow doesn't exist too, just in case. Then we're going to set this equal to the pointer. We do this so we can play around with the arrow code in this box. So the arrow's image alpha, we're going to set that to 1, so it's visible. Pointer X, it's very important that we have the image angle of it. And what this is going to do is it's just going to continuously move it to where the mouse in the mouse X and mouse Y is going to be. So wherever you press in the room, that arrow is going to be it's just going to immediately be there. Then the next, this is for Ben's tutorial. I subtract 2 stamina from the global stamina variable, and then I reset the stamina charge time. So this is just a way to make sure that our stamina gets used up when we use the boomerang, so we can't use it in a limited amount of times. Then we have the left down event. So now that we have pressed it, we have created effectively a red particle in the room, and we have also created one of these yellow blocks. Now we're going to be playing with those 2 items. So first we got to make sure that they do exist, and so we can start playing with them. And just to make sure that the boomerang doesn't exist, and this is to make sure that we're in the right state. Then this is called is a global variable, and we're going to set it to true here. What this global variable is going to do is, if at any point it is set to false, it destroys all red particles in the room, it destroys all yellow particles in the room, and it destroys the red arrow if it exists in the room. This is I thought this was really nice, because if at any point something were to happen to the code, like let's say that the boomerang crashes into a wall, we want it to I want everything to be turned off, and if we just set everything to destroy itself, if this global is true, then that's really convenient. So what this is effectively saying is that we're gonna set this to true. And if it ever gets set to false, everything gets destroyed. Then we have, so make sure that boomerang doesn't exist. Make sure we have a red particle in the room. We make sure we have a yellow box in the room, and this one just sets what state the player is in. You don't need to have this one if you want. You can just ignore it. This one, so here, what this is going to be is we need to figure out where the last so here's what's going to be happening here. We're going to be creating a second box and another red particle, but for the next box that is created, we need to make sure that there's a certain amount of distance between a box and the previous box, you know, like we want there to be space in between. And we need to figure out the distance between the mouse and the yellow box. So what this does is if the mouse, let's say that the mouse is here. Here we go. And here is a yellow box that was created. It's and the x and y coordinate of the box, let's say, is here, and it's going to be checking the distance. So this is what it's going to do. It's going to return a number corresponding to the amount of space between these 2 points. All right, I think that makes sense. That was pretty awesome. The next thing is going to be the direction. I'm just going to explain it really quickly, just in case anyone's new. The way this works is, this is, imagine you have angles, do you remember this one from high school? 90-degree angle? So what this does is, here's the x and y position of the last yellow box, which we will fill out. Yeah, it's yellow. What the direction will do is it's going to tell you what the angle of this. So here it would probably return something along lines of 45 degrees, because here's the x and here's a mouse, and this angle is I should delete this angle would be around 45 degrees. And this is going to be super useful because with this code, it'll allow us to change the image angle of the next yellow box. Without this, all the yellow boxes would have the same direction. It would look pretty freaking bad. The next thing we're going to do is we also do it for the red one. This is so I did it because I thought it would look neat, but I ended up turning it off anyway. You don't have to do this one if you don't want to, but I find it's still very nice, just in case you want to change your mind later. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be continuously creating the red particles wherever our mouse X and mouse Y is in the room. Okay, so that's what it was. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is we're just going to make sure that the boomerang doesn't exist and a red particle, the red instance exists, and far is greater than 15. This variable, remember, is the amount of space between the mouse and the last instance of okay, so wherever my mouse is here, the amount of space between here, this yellow thing, and my mouse. So this is returning 15. So right now, let's say it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Then it's going to create another yellow particle. And the cool thing about this is it's still like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15. Create one. It doesn't matter which direction you go. It just to the distance. So, okay. So now we are far enough, so we create another yellow particle. Yellow. We're going to be creating another yellow instance, only after we are 15 away from it. Here, this is the coolest thing ever. We are going to be setting the image angle equal to the where the mouse is, that example. So wherever this is, it's going to set the image angle to this. Oh man, why am I using this? There we go. That. 45. Okay, so we have effectively created a yellow item, and then we're setting, and we've also created another red path, and now we have set the image angle to where the mouse is, and then we're going to set arrow to true. This works similarly to this. If it's ever off, we just turn off the arrow. The next thing is, honestly, you could just use audio play sound. But you won't, because you're a freaking badass and doing the extra mile. Here's what we're going to do. First, before you do this, you need to do this. Okay, you need to put this somewhere in your create event. It's very important you put this in your create event. Emitter equals audio emitter create. And then once you do that, you have to do this. You cannot get away with not doing this. It's gonna create a memory leak, and your game is gonna get laggy if you don't do this. The audio emitter free emitter. Okay, what does this do? This creates an audio emitter in your player item, and in destroy, this destroys your player the audio emitter. Well, the reason we do this is because we're going to be playing around with the sound. Do you remember how the sound went like da 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 da, and then when the boomerang got touched the yellow boxes, it went da 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 da. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to change the gain of the emitter. So the volume is going to start out really low, and then as you create more and more of the yellow boxes, the volume is going to gradually get higher. Alright, so that's what this one is. It just controls the volume, so it starts low and ends up high. And then later, when the boomerang is released, the boomerang's volume is going to go high, and then it's going to go low. It's going to sound really pleasing to the ear, I think. Super nice. Then we have, okay, so we put emitter here, because that's where it's going to be playing the audio from. The next thing what's going to do is we're going to put this, you just copy and paste it, and what this does is it's going to look at the amount of yellow boxes in the room. Alright, let's check out how many yellow boxes there are in the room. After it has done so, oh dang, you might need to delete this. After you have found all the yellow boxes in the room, it's going to be divided by 20. So it's going to return some really low number, like 0.001. Afterwards, it's going to say, alright, that's a pretty low number, and you can delete this if you want. You can just put like, actually for this, video effects, volume, sound effect. Okay, so it's sound effects. So instead of having this, you can just put like 0.8 instead, or whatever. There we go. So it's going to start out, it's going to look at all the number of yellow boxes in the room, and it's going to return a very low number. And then we're going to multiply that by 0.8. And then it's, so as more yellow boxes are in the room, the number is gradually going to get higher and higher. The reason we have this now is because at some point the audio is going to get super loud. It's going to get too loud, actually. It's going to start hurting the ears, you know. So what this does is it says if at any point the volume exceeds 1, we're just going to play 1. We don't want to play this big number now because we have 2 billion yellow boxes in the room. You know, we're just going to go with 1. We don't want to injure our audience's ears. That's what that is, you know. Now that you know that, everything else is much easier to explain. This changes the pitch. So just like this one, the pitch starts out at 0, and then 0 gets divided by 12. So it just returns 0 at the beginning. But as you start to get more and more yellow items in the room, the pitch slowly increases. Dun 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 dun. You know, like that. It's quite nice. And then afterwards, we're just going to play the sound. And the sound is going to be playing on the emitter, so these two effects will play the your desired sound effect. This makes sure it doesn't loop, and this is the priority. Alright, so effectively, we have just done this. That is what we have just done. Nothing else is technically being created. Then we're going to create that. Okay. Oh man, isn't this fun? Game making. Oh, isn't this so nice, you know? We go from like, oh, so much code, to like, here's a little baby code, you know? We're fine. So, this is responsible for creating the boomerang object. Easily put. We first make sure that the boomerang doesn't exist, and then we make sure that the yellow boxes exist in the room so we can follow them. Then we're going to create the boomerang item. And this just sets it the X position to the player, -7. You can just actually just go with X and Y -7. Okay, so after you have all of these things, we're going to set this variable. It's called oyellow.letsGo equals true. What this means is if at any point this is set to true, the boomerang will follow the path, and if it's set to false, it'll just not follow the path. And then arrow equals false. The reason we do that is to make sure that this arrow stays stationary. You know, we don't want it to move anymore. We don't want it to follow our mouse. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Then this doesn't work. Just ignore it. Then that's it. Now let's look at the boomerang actual code. Okay, so we're going to go in the hardest one, which is this one, and then everything else is going to be easy peasy afterwards. So the way this works, it's very similar to the player state. It has 3 states. There's going to be a state where it's going to be, delete. Oh, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to kind of explain what's going on. So there are going to be 3 states. Oh man, why do I want to use black? Okay, so 3 states. First state is going to be boomerang following the path. Second state is going to be path doesn't exist. Yeah. No. That's supposed to be like path doesn't exist. So if a path doesn't exist, boomerang doesn't, like, where does the boomerang do? It just says, you know, boomerang, wherever you are going, just keep going in that direction. You know? Just keep going to that direction. You can also set it to, okay, boomerang, now that the path doesn't exist, let's figure out where the player is in the room. Hi, boomerang, it's me, player. Hello. Boomerang's like, hello, how are you? It's like, yeah, we're gonna like, can you come on back to me? It's like, yeah, sure, why not? So I was usually going this way, but since you are now here, I've decided I'm gonna go to you, because I love you. It's like, then they love each other very much. This is very beautiful. I'll make a movie out of this later. Alright, then the third state is, oh man, boomerang has just collided against a dang wall. That sucks. That's a solid object. So now that it has crashed into a solid object, it goes, oh well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna go down to signal the player that I am no longer flying. I'm just gonna drop down on the floor. And in this state, I'm pickable. Also in this state, I'm pickable as well. I can be grabbed by the player. In this state, I can also be grabbed by the player. But in this state, I cannot be grabbed by the player. So, it cannot be grabbed, and the boomerang can be grabbed here, and it can also be grabbed here. So, let's just check out these states really quickly. So here we have boomerang, it's going to be following, and here it's going to be crashing into a solid object. And then now that it has crashed into a solid object, the boomerang did a little jump. Nice. Simple. But if we go like this, it'll go back. It'll be like, oh wait, we have just finished the path. Let's go back to the player. We can also make it so it doesn't go back to the player. Okay, I can just delete this, I think. There we go. So you can also make it so it'll just keep going. Man, it's like, okay, I'll just keep going. I'm not going in this direction anyway. You know, so both of those look really nice. It's up to you, whichever you want. So now that we know how it works, let's actually get into the programming of it itself. And it's going to be super fun, because that's why we're here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to initiate a herdbox entity. This is Ben's programming. What it essentially does is it's going to set the boomerang to, it'll like create a hitbox around it. For those of you that aren't using Ben's code, what we can do instead is we can just set a collision event here with the enemies, you know. So this is it's a part of Ben's code. What it does is it's going to look at the speed variable, it's going to look at the direction, it's also going to see if there's friction, if there's any balance or any collision amount. So just copy and paste them here. For for this we're going to set it to 0.5. So if you do not have this, you would just go like this. 0.5. This is 1, and we don't really need anything here. So that's what you would do. Okay. So first we're gonna set up some variables. We're gonna set start underscore to false. We're gonna set underscore acceleration to 0.5. We're gonna set our max speed to 3. The start path is gonna equal to 0. Image speed is going to equal to 1.8, speed underscore equals to 12, and then this is going to be the an enum. It's going to contain the 3 states that we're going to be following. The start state is going to equal to, I just called it ang to summarize for Boomerang, you know. I have it to ang.follow, and this just makes it so that when the Boomerang starts out, it'll just set to follow by default. Then we have state is just gonna equal to this. Then we're gonna have more variables. Real underscore speed is gonna equal to 3. dxl is equal to 0.2. It's gonna deaccelerate the Boomerang. And then a effect is this is gonna be the sound effects that are gonna be playing. I'm just gonna set this true. Pickup false, so it doesn't get picked up. We set an enum, ang. We're gonna have a follow, land, and backstate. Then we have these variables are responsible for making sure that it looks like there's gravity. You know, like it moves up the z-axis, like it's physically hitting a wall and then it just jumps. For that we set z underscore to 0, z underscore speed to -3, gravity underscore to 0.2, alarm 1 equals -1, hit alarm 3 equals to -1. Alright guys, let's go. Alright, then we have the destroy event. For this, whenever the Boomerang gets picked up, we're going to be creating the animation effect. If you don't have this in Ben's code, we can just take a look at it really quickly. Alright, so the way this works is essentially it just creates well, it'll create an instance layer, whatever effect you set it to. So it's gonna so we actually have to like look at this, you know, if you don't have it. It's it just has one line of code. Whenever animation is over, we just destroy it. Pretty simple. So what this does is this just sets the sprite index to the sprite index of this animation, and at the end of the animation it just destroys itself. It's pretty simple and pretty nice. And then this makes sure it also has depth to make sure it's if the player is in front of the item, he appears in front of it, and if the player is behind the item, he appears behind it. Easy. Then we have, now that we have caught it, we have to set the remember that global yellow life variable that we created in the player? We set this to false because at this point we know that there shouldn't exist any more yellow or any more of the arrow, any of these yellow boxes or any of these arrow boxes. If there exist any for some reason, we will set them to false, which will in turn destroy them. Okay, next. Depth equals to -y. This ensures that it gets drawn in front of the player. Max speed is going to equal 2. So the way this works is it's going to start out very fast, and then continuously it's going to be slowing down. You know, like throw the boomerang, it starts out really fast, and then it's slowly going to go slower. And I just have these numbers like this, so it it just feels a little bit nicer than if I just have it on one number. Event user, state. This way it says, okay, so what this does is it says, what state are we in? We're in the Boomerang follow state. State equals to start state, which equals to follow state. And so this makes it so it's always running this code every single step. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in some what ifs. If the state is not the land state, it means it can only be the follow or the back state. That means that it can be one of these two states. Like, it hasn't collided with a solid object. It's either following a path, or it's a path does not exist, and it's deciding whether it wants to return to the player or if it just wants to continue. So here we're going to set down the damage. So the way this works is it's going to be creating a hitbox around the boomerang every single step, and this box is only going to be damaging. I have it set to the enemy parent, so any enemies that exist in the game will be damaged by the boomerang. And I can delete this one, but I also have it set so it destroys grass. So now that we have these variables, let's figure out, like, in case you don't have this event script, here it is. It's just essentially creates the hitbox, and it's just going to be creating a hitbox around the boomerang. And the hitbox item, in case you don't have, so what it does is it creates a hitbox around whatever you want it to set it, and it has these two variables, damage and the knockback. And it also you also create an accessor. This is responsible for telling the game what it's going to be damaging. The things that it's going to be damaging are going to be contained in this box. And alarm, this is just how long the hitbox is going to last. When it's sent to, when the alarm exists, the hitbox destroys itself. Alright, and now that we have these things, we're going to set it's only going to last for like 20 seconds. So, no, actually not 20, but a 20th of a second every single frame. Oh, if you don't have this global variable, you can just write down room speed. Wait, no, that's Gamemaker 1.4. Dang it. I have this in game. Okay. Okay, there we go. Oh, it was so simple in Gamemaker 1.4, you know? You could just write room speed underscore room, and it would be fine. So, if you don't have this, you would just write this. Game get speed, game speed FPS times 20. This essentially gets you 1 second. This entire freaking long thing of code. All that does is it says, how long is a second? A second is this. And then we get 1/20th of a second. So this is what this does. It just says this alarm is going to last a 20th of a second, and after 20th of a second, it's going to destroy the hitbox. So that's what that does. Then I play an audio effect. You can also use audio play sound. Both should work the same. I use this instead because I have all sound effects in so I have the sound a little bit different. That's why. Alright, so if the state is not land, so it means we're still so the reason why we do this is to make sure that we can put in the trail of the boomerang. So every 1/100th of a second, it's going to be creating the boomerang trail in the follow state or the back state. and the image index, that is the index that this troll is going to be following, is going to be the same one as the boomerang. So yeah, this just says, let's just create the boomerang trail, and it's going to be, it's going to have the same image index as the boomerang is going to have. That's what that does. Good thing is that these alarms are very short and they don't have anything, almost anything. Alarm 0, destroy this item. Nothing here, nothing here, but it's very important you have these alarms. So make sure you have like some blocks of code, or else the alarm is just gonna like not exist anymore. Gamemaker's gonna delete it. So make sure you have these descriptions. Then afterwards, we're gonna have the draw. This is responsible for creating the small shadows, and it's also going to be responsible for creating the depth of the boomerang. You know, as soon as it crashes into a wall, it has to go up and then it has to go down. So the way we're going to achieve that is like this. First, we check the state. If the state is the follow state, if it's like following the red dots, or the boomerang is like going back to the player, or just or no red dots exist, you know, it's like, where do I go now? If it's in any of these two states, it's going to create a small shadow, and it's going to create it 10 pixels under the boomerang. Draw self. This is the shadow that I have. It's nice. It gets the job done. Then it's going to draw itself, because without this, it just deletes itself. Then else is we're going to have the okay, so what this means is now we are now landed. We are not in these two states anymore. We have crashed into a solid, and now we are crashing down into the floor. If we are crashing down into a floor, we're going to set the small shadow. We're going to set it a little bit closer to the boomerang, so it looks like it has landed on the ground. Now, this is the most important part. Instead of using draw self, we're going to draw the sprite. The reason why we do this is because we're going to do this. So remember that one little variable that we created here, z, which is responsible for giving the item depth, just to make it look like it's going up and down. We set y plus this. So later in the game, we're going to like play with the z, and then we're gonna achieve the power of depth. All right. Then we're getting to the fun stuff. This is the So in order to get the bombs to just follow the boomerang, it's just so simple, super simple. It's so nice. We set x equal to boomerang.x, and y equals boomerang dot y. And since we're using the other command, this code is going to be run in the bomb state. So the bomb is continuously going to be following the boomerang. And for this picked up variable that I have, what it does is the bomb has this variable called picked up, which means it has been picked up by the boomerang. And I think if I have picked up here, dang, yeah, there was some really important reason I had this. 1 second. Why would I have this line if it wasn't important, you know? It must be in the boomerang code. Oh, it's because of this. Okay, so the reason I have the bomb set to picked up is because when the boomerang crashes into a solid and it's carrying a bomb, it's going to check the bomb's picked up. You know, the reason it does so is because if you just have a bunch of bombs in the room and the boomerang happens to catch just one and it crashes into a wall, it'll explode all bombs in the room regardless. It won't crash the bomb specific to the one that it has picked up. So that's kind of like the reason why. I don't think I have any other reason. Oh, of course. If the boomerang has crashed into an enemy, and the bomb variable is true. So this means that the bomb is now picked up. It'll destroy the bomb. It'll destroy the bomb, and by doing so, it'll create the explosion. So the reason we put the picked up is to make the bomb explode when it crashes into a solid or with an enemy. So now that so that's what this does. Just makes the bomb volatile. We just kind of covered over this. If the instance exists bomb and bomb dot picked up equals true, it'll destroy the bomb. Now we're gonna check the so pick up with other x equals boomerang. What this does is we have these the items that we collect, right? And if you hit them with the boomerang, they are going to follow the boomerang. See? Just like that. Oh. But yeah. I guess I only got one. But they essentially just make it so they're just following the boomerang if they collide with the boomerang. Super simple code. Now with the player, we need to make sure that the player catches the boomerang and destroys the boomerang object. This can only happen if the boomerang is set to this one, which is there does not exist a path anymore, so the boomerang is gonna go back to the player, or it'll just keep going. Then, or we can have this one, which is the boomerang has crashed into a wall, and now it's just laying down on the floor. Thank you. Alright, so we have these, okay, so that's the goal of this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check the player's, the state of the player. The reason we do this is I found it very fun that if the player is jumping and the player is at a certain height, we can increase the height of the player. You don't actually have to do this. I thought this was really fun. Yeah, I'll just show you what this is really quickly. This is just extra. Oh, so there we go. It'll just like, oh, super jump. That's what that does. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Just, I thought it was fun. The next thing was if pickup equals true. This is a variable. This variable, if I remember correctly, we will set down to. So we start out with false, right? But we set it to true if it's land or back. The purpose of this is to make sure that the boomerang has met its goal. It has now picked up all the red dots. So it's set to true. We're gonna catch it, and we're gonna destroy itself. The audio. Then we set the little audio effect. Then we destroy it. Then you don't have to have this one. This is just for the. I found this to be really nice. What this does is, if the so global.strength. So this is just the stamina meter on the under. What this is I found it was really nice that you could use up 2 stamina bars, right? So the boomerang takes 2. But if you catch the boomerang, you get an extra bar. So you see, you get 1 instantly. I know it looks like 2, but it gives you 1. Yeah, you don't have to have that one. I just thought it would be pretty nice if you caught the boomerang, you would reward the player with an extra stamina bar, for doing a good job. The reason I have 2 is because I couldn't figure out a way to just use the and or statement without the game breaking on me. So instead I just have 2 things that do the exact same thing. If the boomerang is on the ground, give back 1 stamina. If the boomerang is returning to the player and there's no more red objects, then we give this object player 1. We don't have to do this. I thought it was just nice. So this is really easy and super nice. With the red particles, if they collide with the boomerang, we just destroy them. Simple. The solid. So for this, we have crashed into a wall, and now we have to change the state of the boomerang into fallen down state. So the first thing we do is we set down the an audio effect. So we play this a sound effect, and the reason we have this is because well, this gets set to true here. So here it just says, oh, so here it says, okay, that sound effect is true. So we're gonna play this, and then we're gonna set this to false. And we do this because this is in this. If it wasn't for if we just put the audio effect, it would always be playing the audio effect every single step, and it sounds very annoying. Then we also set yellow life to false. Remember that command I told you? This was really helpful here, because now we just have to destroy the arrow. We have to so things we have to destroy. We have to destroy this, the red thing. We have to destroy this yellow thing, and then we also have to destroy the so these three things: the yellow blocks, the arrow, and the red blocks that the player cannot see. Then afterwards, we're going to switch the state to the land state. If a bomb exists anywhere in the room, and the bomb has been picked up by the boomerang, with the bomb, we're going to destroy it. It's like reading a sentence. Here's where the things get super cool. Now, the easiest way to do this would be to just copy and paste the exact same code. It does the exact same thing that it did when we created in the player event, except now it goes backwards, because every time it's colliding with the yellow blocks, it's lowering the pitch, and it's also lowering the volume. It's really pleasing to the ear, I found. So that's what that does. Now we have the three states. Actually, pretty nice. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out if a red instance exists in the room. Remember, the red instance are these little red dots that tell the boomerang where to go. If there does exist, we are going to run this, and if there doesn't exist, then we're just going to keep going until we hit a wall. And then we're going to set things to back. Okay, so let's go. First, we're going to create this variable. It's just going to store the red X. It's going to be very simple. It's going to be very nice later, because we're going to be using this a lot. Then we also set the Y position in the room. And now, the direction and distance that we learned previously, we can now just use them here. So distance, the amount of distance between the boomerang and the red is going to equal here. Direction is going to equal here. And then we're going to also get the X dir and Y dir. This is going to be very important. It's very important you get it all in order. So I'm going to make sure that make sure you pause the video for this. Very important. So now that we have these values, we need to get we're going to get the speed and the acceleration. This is going to be responsible for actually moving the boomerang. So get the speed. Speed is going to equal to the length dir x speed underscore, which we should have created in the create event. Direction underscore y speed. So just make sure you copy it all down. Y speed equals to length dir underscore y speed underscore direction underscore. Okay. So now that we have gotten all of the important variables here, we're going to make sure that the boomerang is actually able to follow the trail. So if the X position of the boomerang does not equal to the X position of the red dot, and the Y position of the boomerang does not equal to the Y position of the red dot, then we are going to be moving the boomerang. And then we set the speed, the direction, and then the speed again. And this is Ben's code. It's pretty simple. I'm gonna set the speed one more time. So this is another script, and in case you don't have it, I'll just gloss over it so you can just create the script really quickly. Alright. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to see if an arrow object exists in the room. And if it does exist in the room and there are no red instances in the room, we want the boomerang to go to the arrow object. Because if it doesn't, it's going to it'll just leave the arrow there indefinitely, forever. So what we do here is we're going to set the arrow. We're going to set a new variable, rx and ry, and they're going to equal to the arrow x coordinate and the arrow y coordinate. And then we're going to check out if the x position of the boomerang does not equal to the x position of the arrow. You know, we're essentially doing this exact same piece of code, and we're doing this one last time. Just like before, we're going to be moving the boomerang continuously, and we're just copying and pasting the same code from before because it's working out pretty well so far. So then afterwards, we finished all of this. We're gonna, if there exists no more red particles in the room and there is no more arrow in the room, then we have successfully completed our path, right? That's what has happened. And if that has happened, then we're going to switch the state to the ang.backstate. And then we're going to set move movement entity to false. This is just going to make sure that the boomerang continues to move. And I'll kind of like hover over in case you don't have it. Oh. Dang, that would have been embarrassing. Okay. After we have gotten the false state, we're going to get the land state in. And the way this works is we have hit a wall. Now we're going to... these values are there to make sure that the boomerang does not move any longer. Speed also decelerates. And then we're going to... This is responsible for changing the z-axis. So now we have hit the wall. Now we're going to be jumping up momentarily, and then we're going to drop down back to the ground. So if you took Ben's course, this is the same thing you would find in the item code. I just copied and pasted it here. I thought it looked really nice. And then you have this, which is pretty optional. So you could just put in these two lines of code, and the boomerang, we just keep going after it has reached the arrow, which honestly, it looks fine. I think it looks pretty nice. Yeah, it just keeps going. But if you want to go to the player, you know, like in traditional Zelda games, you would do this. This is the exact same piece of code from the follow state, with the exception is that instead of the red dot, it's now going to be going to the player. So it's pretty much the same code. You can just copy and paste it. Just replace O red with O player. See, this was why it was so useful. You just have to change these two things and bam, code just does something else, but it's so nice when you use variables. Alright, that was the boomerang piece of code. Now we will look at the last remaining objects, which honestly aren't that much to begin with. So something else I have is just quick to share is that this is my boomerang object. It's just something I drew in, I don't know, like 10 seconds. Actually, it took one more than that. And then I got that same boomerang shape, and then I took out the red dot and I took out the black thing, and I created this kind of like effect on it. That's how it works. what this does is if you notice, it had the exact same number of images as the boomerang had, and because so, we can make it so the image index, that is the index of which the image index is going to be the same one as the boomerang index. So first, we don't want it to move at all, like in image speed. We want to keep that at 0. Then this is how long it's going to live for, how long it's going to last until it starts to fade away. So this is going to stay alive for 65% of a second, 65/65ths of a second. And then if it's set to true, afterwards, if once the alarm goes off, we're gonna get this variable and we're gonna set it to true. Destroy me equals true. And just like it sounds, it's like, okay, so if at any point this variable is set to true, we're gonna slowly delete it. And this is like the nicest way. So if image alpha equals 0, if the boomerang is translucent, it's see-through, it's like it's not visible anymore in the room, and the variable destroy me equals true, so we're gonna slowly fade away the boomerang. And once the boomerang equals to 0, we're going to destroy it. Well, not the boomerang, but the trail. So it looks really nice. Okay, then we have the yellow boxes. They serve very simple purposes. So here we're gonna do the let's go equals false. Then we're gonna have these variables. I set this to sexy because I thought, hey, the boomerang is gonna naturally go to the sexiest yellow block in the room, you know. So this just makes it so the boomerang is gonna follow whichever one has the sexy one. So 10 plus instance number of yellow. Then I don't think I ended up using this 2 either. I think it just worked out magically. Then we're gonna set ran to 3. So here we're gonna set this real quickly. X random is gonna equal to random range -3 and +3. Y random is gonna be set to ran, just like this. Alpha is going to be equal to true, and image speed is going to equal to 0. Whew. Then we're going to set the depth to -1000 to make sure it appears in front of everything. And then if the instance exists boomerang, then and let's go equals true. I think it should. No, it's not true. Oh, let's go equals to true once the player releases the mouse. And object boomerang x equals to x, and object y equals to y. Then sexy is gonna minus equal 1, and if sexy equals 0, is to destroy. This makes it so it'll destroy itself if the boomerang collides with it. I could have just had the boomerang collide, but I went with this. If at any point the yellow life is equal to false, destroy itself. And if image alpha is less than... Okay, so this is kind of interesting. I'll explain what this is later. If the image alpha at any point is less than 80%, it'll increase it by 0.5. Then we're going to set these 2 variables. Box x is equal to instance nearest x, y, object solid, dot x plus 8. Box y is equal to instant nearest x, y, o solid, dot y plus 8. And then distance is going to equal to point distance plus point distance, x, y, box x, box y. What I was doing with this was, at one point I thought it would be really cool that if you collide with a solid object, it would change colors, you know, to alarm the player that, hey, you're too close to a solid, it's gonna crash. See, I thought it would be much nicer. So whenever the boomerang is physically on a solid, which, you know, something I cannot go through, then it'll set the image speed to 1. That's what that does. This sets the distance, so the distance between these boxes and the solid object boxes, and if it's close enough to the solid, it'll set the image speed to 0.5. So here's what this does. If the yellow box, which remember, it gets created at the mouse X and mouse Y, and you know what else is created at the mouse X and mouse Y? This arrow. And you know what? If it collides with the arrow, if at any point it's touching the arrow, it's gonna set the image alpha to 0. So why do we do this? The reason we do this is because right now in a yellow box is also being created, but we cannot see it. That's because the image alpha is set to 0. But as it stops to collide with the arrow, it slowly becomes translucent. And if we didn't have this, it would look like this. I don't know, it looked really bad to me, so I just thought it would look nicer if I made it like that. Alright, so those are the 3 objects of code, and here is the sprites that I use. Make sure you have it's here on the left side. It's a very small size. The reason why is because if the mouse is right here, it's going to get created right here, rather than in the middle. It'll look really nice that way. Afterwards, we have the arrow. So, if at any point, step event, if at any point the yellow is set to false, then destroy itself, and if there aren't any yellow objects in the room, if there are any more of these, then just destroy itself. Just as a safety measure. If at any point if it collides with the boomerang, and there aren't any of these yellow boxes in the room, then we're going to destroy itself. So this basically means that we can do this. So if it weren't for that code, and we did this, as soon as the boomerang collided with the arrow, the arrow would disappear. That way, it'll be the last thing to delete. And then after that, we have the trail that the boomerang follows. Here we have 3 pieces of code. I don't know why I don't have anything for this. I can just delete it, I guess. We have 2 events, and here's the final stretch, guys. We're gonna have let's go equals to false. We set this to true when here on the object player. I'm gonna set this to sexy. Sexy. It's the most desirable pixel, and we're gonna set desirable because that's the one that the boomerang is gonna go to. He wants the sexiest block, and we're gonna. This is equal to 10 plus instance number O yellow. Ran is equal to 3. X random equals random range minus random, and then we have y random equals to random range minus random ran. Alpha is equal to true. Oh, okay. Alright, guys. So now that we have these 3 items, and we have the object player mouse press and mouse hold and all that good jazz, we should have the boomerang. Oh, and after you finish, make sure you set this to not visible. That way it's accurate, but the player doesn't know it's accurate. They just think it's, oh, because it's magic or something. It's quite nice. If you have any questions, just ask me in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer. And something cool is set the bomb. Oh, almost caught me. Wait. You should also be able to catch any gems. Oh, no gems? Oh well. So that is that is it. And hopefully this tutorial was very helpful. If not, just give me a question in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. Have a great day.